This month, the State Duma of the Russian Federation will review the draft budget for the next 3 years in its first reading. The Kremlin has called it stable and balanced, while global economists agree that this document has nothing to do with reality. They compare Russia's economy to an exhausted horse that simply refuses to move. Sanctions, the aftermath of strikes on oil refineries, a shortage of labor, and the lack of cutting-edge technology. Let's break down how all of this is played out. This week, the Russian Ministry of Finance released documents showing that Russia's budget deficit in 2025 will be 2.6% of GDP instead of the 1.7% forecasted in the spring. In simple terms, the government is spending more than it earns. And the budget gap has already grown by 1.5 times. This is the largest deficit in the past 5 years. The gap is mainly due to a drop in oil and gas revenues and falling energy prices because of sanctions. The government is trying to patch the holes by raising VAT, but that hits the wallets of both citizens and businesses. Prices are going up, but incomes are not.
In addition to rising gas prices, Russians will have to pay for military expenses both directly and indirectly. The most noticeable step to close the budget gap is raising the sales tax from 20% to 22%. The Ministry of Finance is also stripping small businesses of tax benefits, moving many into higher tax brackets. Social spending, which before the 2022 invasion traditionally exceeded defense spending, has lost its relevance since defense expenses are now about 1.5 times higher than spending on healthcare, education, culture, and sports. From a publication by the Washington Post.
The increase in VAT will be a heavy blow for small and medium-sized businesses. The cost of goods and services will rise, margins will shrink, and many entrepreneurs, in order to survive, will go underground. At the same time, there will be no investments, benefits, or assistance from the government. The government already had to cut funding for state programs by 1/3 just to save at least some money. Programs that were cut include those for the development of healthcare, the aviation industry, and Russia's chemical safety. The economy is suffocating under the weight of sanctions and internal mistakes. All of Putin's promises about breakthroughs and new growth turned out to be just empty words.
The country's economy is collapsing, and Russia might even find itself on the brink of default. Inside the country, crime has surged, and bulk inflation and public discontent have also increased sharply. NATO, which Putin used to scare people with, has expanded to include Sweden and Finland, while Russia has become a vassal of China and North Korea. This list of Putin's achievements could easily go on, but even this brief rundown clearly shows that in just 3 years, Putin has turned Russia into a paper bear. Worse yet, this paper bear is badly wounded, possibly mortally so. From a publication by The Hill.
Here's just one example. Cut off from imports of new airplanes, spare parts, and maintenance, by 2030 Russian airlines could lose hundreds of airliners. This is reported by the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine. Because of Western sanctions, maintenance of foreign equipment has become impossible. Some planes have simply been cannibalized for parts, while others they're trying to lease abroad. For old Soviet aircraft, Rosaviatsia is simply extending their service life up to 60 years.
109 foreign aircraft are being withdrawn from the fleets of Russian airlines, along with another 230 Soviet-made planes that are 40 to 60 years old. There are also plans to decommission more than 200 helicopters, most of which are Russian-made. Currently, Russian carriers have 1,135 aircraft. Of those, only 1,088 are actually flying. The rest have already been dismantled for parts. If this trend continues, Russia will lose almost half of its civil aviation fleet within 5 years. From a report by the Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service.
There's no fuel. Please don't bang on the window, it won't make it appear. Well, announcements like this have popped up at gas stations in almost every region of Russia. Gasoline coupons and a limit of 30 and then 20 liters per car. This is now the reality for the so-called gas station country. From August to early October, Ukrainian drones disabled a significant portion of the Russian Federation's oil refining capacity. 38% of the capacity is sitting idle. Gasoline production has dropped by 1 million tons, and the fuel shortage has reached 20%.
The situation with gasoline, in short, isn't changing. There's no 100 octane, no 95, not even 92. Basically, the only thing left, only diesel is available. I've only got, like, 40 kilometers of range left, and that's it. So, listen, there's no gasoline in Belgorod. That's the story.
Now, in Russia, they're looking to allow the use of fuel additives. A substance with a complicated name, monomethylaniline, is used to raise the octane rating of gasoline and boost its production during shortages. This is a toxic substance. It has a negative impact on both human health and the environment. And, well, a car won't run for long on this kind of fuel. In addition, Russia has already significantly increased its imports of gasoline from Belarus. In September, deliveries quadrupled compared to August. Now, in Moscow, they're trying to set up logistics chains and start buying gasoline from China, South Korea, and Singapore. We're talking about deliveries of 150,000 tons of petroleum products per month.
I am grateful to our soldiers for their accuracy. Russia is choosing a war that destroys the lives of our people, and it must be held accountable for that. Our range will continue to increase. Russia is importing gasoline from various regions, from Asia, including China and other countries, and from Europe, including Belarus. This is one of the results of Putin's war. The so-called gas station country isn't selling gasoline, it's importing it. These are the rightful results of the security service of Ukraine, our armed forces of Ukraine, our intelligence, and our Ukrainian weapons manufacturers.
The banking sector in Russia is propped up by government contracts and military spending, while businesses and private borrowers are left without access to cheap loans. In addition, sanctions have cut Russian financial institutions off from international transactions. And now, the aggressor country may also lose the central bank's foreign currency reserves, which are held in euros and dollars in foreign accounts. EU finance ministers have begun discussing providing Ukraine with a reparations loan using these frozen assets. During the meeting, almost everyone said that Russia's economy is weak, the sanctions are working, and pressure on Moscow needs to continue.
Swedish intelligence claims that the government in Russia is deliberately, I'm not surprised, lying about inflation. They know it's 21%, just as we do. But they don't say this officially. Why don't they do this? They want us to believe that the sanctions aren't working, that Ukrainian soldiers might lose some of their resolve to fight. But the restrictions are working, and we will continue to do everything we can. For our part, we are working hard to strengthen the sanctions and ensure they are enforced. The Russian economy is actually quite small, just 12% compared to the EU's economy, and it's not doing well at all. That's exactly what I want to convey to my colleagues.
Even though Russia's economy is falling apart and tanks and shells do nothing to improve quality of life or create long-term investments, it doesn't stop the aggressor. The latest strikes on Ukraine's infrastructure and the killing of innocent civilians are proof of that. But it is possible to force Putin to make peace and bring him to the negotiating table. Strengthening Ukraine's defense capabilities, sanctions, and the oil price cap, all of these measures are working. And it won't be possible to keep telling people that everything is under control for much longer when everything is burning, falling apart, and getting more expensive.